Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through the noise, grab those essential bits of knowledge, and get you well-informed fast. Plus, maybe a few surprises along the way. Today, we're looking at a really interesting mix of geopolitics, economics, well, regional dynamics too. Our sources are focused on its recent high-level visit between Pakistan and Iran, two major players. So this deep dive, we're going to explore all angles, nuclear stuff, trade goals, even wider conflicts in the region.
Yeah, and what's really striking from the material is just how much they covered in, a 2-day visit. It's a whole spectrum of issues. You can see the complex challenges, but also the strategic openings, how these two countries are trying to position themselves. We'll try to connect those dots, what they say they want versus the bigger international picture, especially on the tricky subjects.
Okay, let's get into it then. We're talking about Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian's first trip to Pakistan, 2 days, and that joint press conference with PM Shehbaz. Not just a photo op, clearly. It was packed with statements, agreements signed. So what jumps out at you first?
Well, if you look at the big picture, the strategic landscape, I'd say it was Pakistan coming out and explicitly backing Iran's right to peaceful nuclear power. Now think about the context. Huge international pushback, recent conflicts, even U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites mentioned in the sources. So Pakistan saying this isn't just, being polite. It feels like a calculated statement, maybe even a subtle nudge against the Western stance. It could definitely make upcoming talks trickier.
Right. And here's where it gets really fascinating, geopolitically speaking. Our sources point out this timing Pakistan statement lands just as European allies, France, Germany, the UK, plus the US, have apparently set this deadline, end of August, for a nuclear deal with Iran. And Iran's apparently had frank talks, they call them, with the Europeans. The IAEA, the nuclear watchdog, thinks this could mean inspections might resume. It all loops back to that 2015 deal, the JCPOA, that the US pulled out of back in 2018.
Exactly. The JCPOA. That deal lifted sanctions for nuclear program limits.
Right.
The Europeans, China, Russia, they're still in it technically. And you mentioned deadlines. There's another huge one, October 18th.
October 18th. What happens then?
That's when the UN resolution underpinning the whole 2015 deal just expires, unless someone triggers the snapback mechanism, basically reimposing all UN sanctions at least 30 days before that date. Then all those UN sanctions on oil, banking, defense, everything, gone, lifted.
Wow.
So yeah, Pakistan's statement, it lands right in the middle of this very, very sensitive diplomatic window. Very delicate timing.
Okay, so beyond the nuclear tightrope they're walking, the leaders also talked a lot about just bilateral stuff, trade. And they threw out a big number, $10 billion in trade between them. That's a serious goal.
It's a huge ambition.
A huge leap from where things are now. So looking at the material, what are the real hurdles to hitting that $10 billion? And do these agreements actually offer practical ways to, get over those hurdles?
Well, what's interesting is the sheer number of agreements they signed, like formal deals. The sources list 12 agreements and Masoud's memoranda of understanding signed before the press conference. And they cover a really wide range. It's not just one thing.
Like what?
Okay, so things like plant protection, quarantine stuff, using the Mirjava-Taftan border crossing together more effectively, collaboration on science, tech, IT, even cultural exchanges, tourism, youth programs, media swaps, plus meteorology, maritime safety, helping each other with criminal justice matters, air services, product standards, even a tourism plan for 2025-27. It feels like they're trying to build this really broad, deep foundation, not just focused on one narrow trade aspect.
That is incredibly comprehensive. But, do we get a feel from the sources which of those 12 are the real game changers and which might be more aspirational?
Yeah.
The material also mentions specific meetings, right, between Pakistan's Commerce Minister Jam Kamal Khan and Iran's Minister for Industry, Mines and Trade, Mohammad Atabak. What did they talk about, specifically on hitting that $10 billion target?
Yeah, those talks seem pretty focused. If you zoom out a bit, they basically recommitted to speeding up trade, clearing up those border delays and bottlenecks, and really trying to build partnership based on trust. Jam Kamal, for Pakistan, said they're ready to push harder on the economic ties, using things like the Joint Economic Commission, the JEC.
That's the formal channel.
Exactly. And also pushing for more regular business-to-business meetings, sending specific industry delegations over. And they pinpointed key sectors: agriculture, livestock, services, definitely energy, and cross-border logistics, getting stuff across the border efficiently. But the big question hovering over all this is how do they actually make it happen, given all the external pressures, sanctions, geopolitics?
Seems they had some thoughts on that at least.
Hmm.
Jam Kamal apparently suggested very specific trade delegations, like getting the provincial chambers of commerce involved too, not just federal, focusing on market access, smoothing out regulations, making it easier to actually do business.
Hmm.
And Atabak, the Iranian minister, really pushed the private sector angle. He even offered to bring Iranian business groups to Pakistan for face-to-face meetings. And he said something interesting, you quoted it earlier basically. The traders are ready, they trust each other.
What they need now is a clear and consistent facilitation mechanism from our sides.
Yeah, that quote, it really nails it, doesn't it? Suggests the political will needs to translate into practical, consistent support on the ground.
Absolutely. And both ministers talked about using the existing trade routes and border crossings better, really focusing on maximizing trade with your immediate neighbors. Jam Kamal even pointed to the ASEAN countries, in Southeast Asia as an example.
Right, how they trade so much within their own bloc.
Exactly. He suggested that as a kind of model for Pakistan and Iran. It really shows they see regional economic integration as strategically vital, maybe a way to build resilience against global issues.
Okay, shifting gears a bit now. It wasn't all economics and nuclear diplomacy. They also got into some pretty sensitive regional issues, things that often dominate that part of the world. PM Shabazz, according to the sources, condemned what he called the former's unjustified attack. That seems to reference those U.S. strikes on Iran we mentioned and offered prayers for Iranians killed.
Mm-hmm.
He also praised Iran for supporting the Palestinians. And then he made this direct link between the situation in Indian-administered Kashmir IIOJK, as it's termed in the source, and Gaza. He urged the civilized world to speak up about Gaza, saying the world must unite for peace in Gaza. Strong words.
And that really highlights the shared regional viewpoints, doesn't it?
Yeah.
President Pezeshkian then thanked Pakistan for its stance against what he called Israeli aggression, and he stressed the need for unity within the Muslim Ummah, the global Muslim community. So it frames the whole bilateral relationship within this wider sense of shared political and cultural identity. Pezeshkian himself apparently said their ties are based on common culture and religion, and that having good relations with Pakistan is just, well, part of Iran's foreign policy.
Makes sense.
Oh, and they also talked about improving border security, which is obviously crucial for both trade and, regional stability.
So wrapping this up,
Mm-hmm.
what does it all mean for you listening in? We've seen this intricate picture emerge. There's the nuclear diplomacy, those big trade ambitions, and these really strong statements about regional conflicts and the need for unity. It definitely looks like two nations trying hard to shape their own path forward while dealing with some pretty intense global headwinds.
Yeah, looking at the bigger picture, this deep dive really shows Pakistan and Iran trying to weave their relationship tighter across so many areas: economy, culture, security, nuclear policy, all while trying to navigate this incredibly complicated global scene. It's a perfect example, really, of that balancing act nations have to do,
Yeah.
balancing their immediate needs and goals with these much broader regional and international forces.
It's been a really insightful look at a pretty high-stakes visit. You can see how these bilateral ties are this mix of shared culture, economic hope, and just raw geopolitical necessity. We've got concrete things like that $10 billion trade target those 12 men use, but then also the massive complexities of Iran's nuclear program and these strong positions on regional flashpoints.
Which leaves us with a pretty important question to ponder, doesn't it? As Pakistan and Iran push down this road of closer cooperation, especially with global tensions high, and those deadlines like the October 18th sanctions expiry looming, how might their efforts to build unity and boost trade actually, shift the power dynamics in the wider region? And what could it mean for international relations overall in the next few years?
Definitely something to think about as you go about your day. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.